Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Drivdahl, D-R-I-V-D-A-H-L. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Fort Worth Fire Department. I want to say thank you. I know 4:30 is not an easy time to get here for you guys, but we wanted to make sure that we were able to give you the most up-to-date information coming from that scene, because that is still an active incident. Everything that you hear today is going to be preliminary numbers. We still have units on scene working, so please make sure to understand that those could change throughout the rest of the day. Fire Chief Jim Davis will speak on behalf of the fire department, and then I'll let Officer Segura introduce the police chief, and Matt Zavatsky on behalf of MedStar, and then Mayor Betsy Price on behalf of the city. I think everybody up here will say it more than once. Our thoughts and prayers are with everybody involved with this incident. This is not an easy one by any means. It's not a normal accident that we work on a regular basis. This is not a fender bender. This is a major catastrophe in our city. So with that, I'll turn it over to Officer Segura.
Thank you, Mike. Welcome, everyone. Well, today we have been challenged with a huge incident in front of us. Thanks to all the community members, thanks to all the social media and our media partners and our public. Chief Noakes will go over some of the details that we have done. As Mike said, it is a very active scene. We have officers and family who are still waiting for results. So with no more further ado, we're going to have Chief Noakes go over some of the details that we have done so far.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. As these guys said, today we have Mayor Betsy Price, City Manager David Cook, Police Chief Neil Noakes, Matt Zavatsky, Chief Strategic Integration Officer at MedStar, and myself, Jim Davis. I'm the Fire Chief here in Fort Worth. This is our hearts are very heavy right now. This is a big impact to our community, and we want to make sure that we speak from the heart to the folks of this community, that we are with them, and our thoughts and prayers are with them and their families as we move through this together as a community. That being said, that just after 6 a.m. this morning, 911 calls started coming into the Fort Worth 911 Communications Center about an auto accident in the southbound express lanes of I-35 at approximately north side. Over the course of the next several hours, 26 Fort Worth Fire Department emergency vehicles, including 3 heavy rescue companies, multiple special units arrived on the scene, in which they found a multiple vehicle auto accident that was still developing and occurring. The Fort Worth Police Department supported getting the road shut down, and then what ended up occurring was the first arriving companies did a scene size up. They decided that the situation as it was presenting to them was going to require more assistance, and they asked for additional companies. The scene size up also included setting up sectors. This scene is over at least about a half-a-mile area. So there were different sectors set up on the north and on the south end, and companies reported to those specific areas. There were extrication sectors set up, triage, treatment, and transportation sectors. Matt Zavatsky will speak more about the condition of the patients as they were determined to be extricated from their vehicle. They were triaged and then taken for transport and treatment. There were multiple people that were trapped within the confines of their vehicles and requiring the use of hydraulic rescue equipment to successfully extricate them from those environments. At the moment, we know that there are 6 fatalities. There are 36 people who were transported to the hospital, and there are a total of 65 people being treated at area hospitals from injuries related to this event today. We know that there's over 100 vehicles involved. Chief Noakes can speak a little bit more to that. And the Fort Worth Fire Department, after the initial scene stabilization, after all of the victims that were able to be found, all the cars that were able to be searched were searched, and they were marked in such a way to assure that we had gotten a look at all the cars that were possible to be seen. The scene was turned over to the Fort Worth Police Department in order for them to begin conducting their investigation and for this event to move to the next phase, which included the recovery of those victims that were not able to be removed or had expired at the scene. So with that, I'm going to step aside and let Matt Zavadsky talk about the patients. Matt?
Thanks, Chief, and everybody. And again, on behalf of the MedStar family, our thoughts and prayers are with all the victims and all of the responders who were part of this and the challenges that they're going to have. As Chief said, there were a total of 36 patients transported from the scene. We had a total of 13 ambulances on scene, plus multiple supervisors, critical care paramedics to assist with that scene stabilization and transport of the patients. Numerous patients were treated and released on the scene. And as the Chief mentioned, through a regional tracking system that has been put in place, we've been able to determine that 65 patients total have sought medical care at hospitals that were part of this incident. So that means that people who may have left the scene, felt fine, adrenaline running through their system when the adrenaline wears off, they then sought medical care. That number is likely to continue to increase as more people tonight, tomorrow, so we'll try and keep track of a final count of the people who sought medical care at hospitals as part of that process. One of the things that we really want to highlight, this is an incident that our agencies train for, but hope and pray never happens. But because of the relationships, because of the hundreds of calls every day that the Fort Worth Police Department, Fort Worth Fire Department, MedStar interact with each other, that mutual relationship, that respect, that ability to work together, and the training that we've done to plan for an incident like this served this community very, very well. This was an unbelievable scene from the perspective of not only the scene safety issues, the multiple casualties that we had. It was dark, it was freezing cold, it was raining and freezing when the rain hit the ground, so there were several first responders who are probably a little sore right now because they actually fell on the scene. But through all of that, the ability to get this number of patients from that type of a scene, as you heard the Chief say, over a very large geographic area, and to get everybody that needed to be off that scene quickly within an hour to an hour and a half was amazing. So hats off to everybody who was on that scene, the leadership, the command staff that was there, helping to make sure that everybody was accounted for. You should be very proud of all the people who worked together to mitigate this scene. It worked very, very well. With that, I'm going to turn the floor over, or the podium anyway, to Chief Noakes to talk about the next steps.
As you've heard, we're all coming to you with heavy hearts today. The scene we saw today is one really unlike one probably any of us have ever seen, and one we pray to God we never see again. Our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers go out to everyone negatively affected by this tragic incident, anyone who was injured, anyone who lost someone, all the family and loved ones of those who are affected. We feel your pain. For us, as the police department responding, we, as Chief Davis said, about 6 o'clock in the morning, calls started coming in. By 6:05, we had officers dispatched, and by about 6:13, we had officers on scene. In total, we had more than 80 police units on scene helping, including our Special Events Emergency Response Unit, which responds to any type of incident that's large scale in nature. And when I arrived on scene, I can tell you, as Mr. Zavadsky just said, the cooperation and the collaboration between the Fort Worth PD, the Fort Worth Fire Department, MedStar, and a multitude of record companies was done very well. You should be proud of the service you received from all the first responders that was out there. And we also want to give a big thanks to all of the healthcare workers who we know were overwhelmed by the numbers of patients they had to see, and we thank them for all that they did to help out. In total, so far, and this is not a final number, we have about 133 cars that were involved in the accident. It appears at this point in the investigation, which is still very preliminary, that ICE was a factor. On a personal note for Fort Worth PD, we had 4 officers that were injured. 3 that were en route to work, 1 that was injured while working the scene. I'm proud to say that they have all been released from the scene, from the hospital, and none suffered serious injuries. This is a tragic day for the Fort Worth family overall, but as we always do, we will get through this. We appreciate the thoughts and prayers that are already out there, going out to all the first responders and especially to the families that are impacted by this incident. We're here for you, and we thank you for being here for us. Thank you. Mayor Price?
Good afternoon. I just want to reiterate what they've said. This is an incredibly difficult day for the city of Fort Worth, a difficult morning, a difficult day. My heart is broken for this community as we deal with the tragic loss of so many lives and so many injuries in a scene like none of us have ever seen before. So many people have lost loved ones or had them injured, and that pain is just incredible, and this whole community will feel that pain. They need your love and they need your prayers to get through this. It's difficult for our first responders, for our medics, for our firefighters, for everyone who's facing and working this scene. It's equally difficult for them. For the hospital workers who are receiving these injured patients, it's difficult for them. Right now, Fort Worth, people are outpouring of love. I've been getting responses. My phone is blown up saying, what can we do? Can we donate blood? Can we send food? Right now, we would ask you to keep all of those involved in your thoughts and in your prayers. In the days ahead, we will be posting how you can help most and what that might look like. And in the face of heartbreak, just remember everyone involved in this, from the patients, the victims, our first responders, the medical personnel, because it is incredibly hard on them working an accident like this. There will be human stories unfolding from this. We're already beginning to hear so many stories about people's heroic efforts, and there will be more to come in the days to come. But to all of you in Fort Worth and all of you in Tarrant County, say your prayers, and we will find a thing for you to help. There's a cold weekend ahead of us, a terribly cold Monday coming, and I would ask that you be very much aware of your neighbors. Check on your neighbors. If you don't see them out, if you haven't talked with them, check on them and be sure that they're okay, and if you can help them. Let's just think about each other. Let's not think about the blame game, but let's think about those involved and how we can all respond in typical Fort Worth fashion. We are standing strong together, and we will stand strong for this community. Now, Chief and Matt will entertain a few questions, and we'll try to keep them sharp because you have a deadline, and this is an active scene that they all need to get back to. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I was curious, was the roadway treated prior to this morning? Do we know anything about that?
That is going to be part of the ongoing investigation. It's my understanding that NTE Tech Express has released a statement that should be made available, but we will definitely be getting more information out about that when we have that information as part of our investigation.
Were the cameras there, TxDOT cameras, anything that caused some of this? Did we ever go back and review it, anything like that?
I can't confirm the cameras as far as TxDOT, but what I would like to ask, we've already seen on social media there have been some videos that were captured by people who were driving by the incident. If anyone has any video that they think would help with the investigation, please reach out to us. 817-392-4222 is our non-emergency number. We'd like to speak with you and see if there's anything from your videos you might have that would assist in the investigation.
Has there also been in the past winter weather conditions out there to that road? Has this been a problem area before in the past?
Not to my knowledge, but it's definitely something we can look at as part of the investigation.
Does TxPress normally open their lanes when there's icy conditions like this? Is this common for them to be open during the morning because it's going to be slow?
I'm going to have to let you talk with them about that. I don't want to comment on their procedures. I don't really know, to be honest.
And give us a little bit the rush to rescue the people in this cold weather and the danger of hypothermia. Any of them suffer?
I'm sorry, one more time, please.
Can you tell us a little bit about the rush to rescue people because the cold weather and the danger of hypothermia?
So that's a great question, and the answer is specifically yes. Anything that happens when it's cold like this, things take a little bit longer. It takes longer for tools and equipment to get to better operating temperature. There are three primary methods that we use in order to remove people that are trapped in cars, and these guys train relentlessly on this type of what we call auto extrication, with the specific purpose of making sure that we do not delay getting people out of the car. So working together with MedStar, we can get that definitive care. The thing about it, your question regarding hypothermia, is any time somebody is trapped in a vehicle for a prolonged period of time in the cold like this, yes, hypothermia is something that we worry about. Yes, hypothermia impacts the care and the outcome of patients frequently. We are aware of those things. We have policies and protocols that we work together with MedStar to assess and to treat those things for. So yes, we're aware of it. Yes, the cold weather plays into the auto extrication today and the patient care treatment. Everything is slower. Everybody's a little bit colder, and so it does impact it. However, we work around those things, and our folks are very good at it, and they work together, as Matt talked about earlier. And I am extremely proud of the men and women of the Fort Worth Fire Department and how they work together today with the police and with MedStar to make sure that all of the vehicles were searched. Everybody that had the best opportunity at life were afforded that opportunity, and everybody worked together in a heroic manner to try to affect the best outcome for these folks.
Do you have any patient this morning with hypothermia?
No, I don't know of anybody. That would be something we'd have to follow up with the hospitals. We treat folks that are extended periods of outdoor temperatures like that. There's a lot of things that we can do to assess them, but I don't know of anybody that actually had hypothermia from prolonged extrications today.
Do you know who's still in the hospital, though? Is there
Yeah,
anywhere
Matt.
you can explain if there's any patients that are still recovering?
Yeah, there are patients that are still in the hospital recovering. 3 of the victims of this crash were critical on scene, and they were identified early through the triage process, and they were the first to come off scene once we assessed that they were going to be the most serious, so we got them off. One of the things that we worry about in environments like this is the people who are uninjured but stranded. And thankfully, working together with Fort Worth Fire Department and with the Transportation Authority and others, we were able to bring shelter buses up to that scene so that people who just couldn't leave, they weren't hurt, but we didn't want them to become victims because they're suffering from hypothermia. So, as the Chief mentioned, the people that were being treated and extricated, they were treated early on for hypothermia to prevent that from happening, but then we had a whole cadre of people that we needed to shelter on scene because we didn't have immediately a place to bring them. Thankfully, again, working together, we were able to bring that up to make sure we didn't have more victims from hypothermia on the scene.
We've got one back here at the back that's been patiently
This
waiting.
may be for Chief Noakes. Can you speak to that stretch of freeway? Would that have been typically checked for ice or the sign of ice with the predictions that we had with that roadway, that stretch of freeway would have been among those checked?
Again, I cannot comment on NTE, Texpress, or their policies or the procedures in this type of weather. I'm sure that if you were to reach out, maybe get a better response from them.
Do you know how many children been involved today? How many children might have been involved in today's accident?
All of the victims that we assessed on scene were adults. One of the things that was fortunate was the time of day of this incident was typically people that were commuting to work. And thankfully, all of the people that were assessed, treated, and or transported, there were no pediatric patients involved at all.
We heard there were some that were healthcare workers, though, coming off their shift. Is that true?
We did observe that. And if you think about the timing of the crash and people who can't opt not to travel, it's going to be your frontline healthcare workers and others, truckers as well. So we did see a large number of people that were victims of this accident that were in scrubs, that had hospital IDs on, which, to be quite frank, made it a little bit more stressful for those of us, because in some cases our folks would know those folks because they might work in the emergency room or others. But typically shift change for the hospitals and the places downtown are going to be 7 o'clock. So we did see a lot of people that were healthcare workers that were part of this crash.
We'll just take a couple more, and then we need to let them get back to this accident scene.
Please be careful about touching the podium. It shorts out the microphone.
We're expecting this to be
Well, the city's streets, we've been sanding for a couple of days. We will continue that process. We're working with our partners at TxDOT to continue that. Our EOC is stood up and in full operation. We'll be monitoring the situation from every extent across this severe weather.
Mayor,
One more.
did you invite the agency that's in charge of this express lane to this press conference?
I believe we did.
Did they say no?
I didn't see the response.
Can we just touch on the actually specifics of getting to this lane? How hard was it to get to people?
Chief, you would,
If
y'all,
were
you were
out
not,
of the situation?
the chiefs would have been the first ones, so they can answer that better than me.
Yeah, thankfully, the way the express lane's set up and where this accident occurred, access to the accident scene itself was not problematic. You could get to it in a couple different ways from north or south. However, the problem was it was spread out over such a large geographic area that it required us to set up basically two different scenes in order to make sure that we were able to work together to navigate the area, the wide swath of area that this road accident occurred on.
Speaking of setup,
This is going to be the last one.
earlier today we were discussing the fact that maybe if this road had a shoulder, this could have been avoided.
Yeah, I don't know that I don't know that any of us are in a position to answer that question for you today. I'll go back though to your question about the weather the rest of the night. I know that we are out 24 hours a day. We are on the streets 24 hours a day, and when our folks, any of us, see conditions that are unsafe, it is reported. As the mayor mentioned, our Joint Emergency Operations Center is functioning and up and running with the expectation that the bad weather is going to continue to go on over the next couple of nights. And so those notifications are made, and then the communication between whatever partner is responsible for that roadway occurs to make sure that there's the best opportunity to solve that problem.
Folks, so we're going to have the PIOs remain on the room if you have any further questions. Keep in mind we have our media portal, police access to all of you. You all have our contacts. Again, we have to go back to the scene. It is an ongoing investigation. So thank you for your time. Have a good evening, and please follow us on all the social media platforms. Thank you.